But I'm too old to do that. I want to do it in the living room in the Greenwich. And don't be difficult, please. I said, okay, I'll do it sometime. Not thinking for a minute that I would be in a position to honor him by giving you all my original view of how the medium could be, in a sense that for me has, i.e. that it is set in a ruin in 1946. In the source idea is Munich, but in some ruined reality in Central Europe, where everybody is desperately trying to make contact with those whom they've lost, and that there's this woman, Madame Flora, the medium of the title, who is in some senses, I hesitate to use the word because I do not understand North-South politics in the sense of the 19th century clearly enough to be sure if I'm using the right terminology. But in my ignorance, the word carpetbagger comes to mind, in that she is profiting from the death around her and stealing the goods. And there's a moment in it when the apparent vision that is presented to the people who are hiring her for the steals says, "Burn all my clothes, give away all my belongings." And in Madame Flora's reality, that means give to her. So she's surrounded in my production by the gilded remains of the objet of the dead, at the same time as she is guardian of two young spirits, Monica and Toby, who are two young people who are deeply in love with each other, but for whom she displays scarce emotion and in fact finally destroys one of them, Toby, in a fit of madness when she feels she's in fact has contacted the dead and has made some kind of contact with another world. So the setting for this comes out of, in a sense, one of my most treasured moments with Gian Carlo. And as I said, it never occurred to me for a moment that a timing would present itself that would be so specifically appropriate. And when I showed Nigel read the production, I was very nervous, and he turned around to me at the end and said, "Well, it's not what I expected at all." And I thought, "Oh God, he hates it." And he said, "Nobody would expect this. I mean, it's nothing like any medium." And he said, "I think it's marvellous, we must do it." If anybody saw the floor, you'll know that marvellous was a term that was much used in that. So I think I've given you a sort of a snapshot of the place from which the production comes. It's honestly about as far away from the specific setting as described in the opera as one can go while still respecting the text. I have two absolutes in my productions. One is that you always respect the text, whether the public knows every line of the opera or not. I do. And always respect the music. And those two things have been my one touchstone, which are absolute. The details, I think, I always take the view that it's good to be as free with those as possible and to take one's input from the artist with whom one's blessed to work. And in this situation, I am incredibly excited and thrilled to be working with Dr. Flammerfeld, who is a very, very long time Gian Carlo Menotti colleague, and with whom I've had very long discussions about this production. And we've put together a cast that I hope you're going to find is very, very exciting. We had one of the first musical run-throughs yesterday was that run-ins through. I never know how to pluralize those things. And the cast is very, very good. Very, very good. And the choice of the young innocents is very specific because I've, of course, worked on two productions of this opera with Gian Carlo, the last one being in Monte Carlo in 2007, in February 2007, during the rehearsals of which Maestro died. So we opened, I believe, on the Thursday or the Friday night in Monte Carlo, and then the next morning went to the cathedral for his memorial service with letters from Gianni Pavarotti, Renée Fleming, etc., coming in with their memories of Gian Carlo. And so it's a piece that could not have more personal significance for me. It comes from my guts that, does that sound good? I hope it doesn't. It comes from my soul, I think, perhaps is a more elegant way of saying it, that this production can only be this way, and I really hope that it serves the music and serves the spirit of somebody who, for me, was both the most incredibly awkward man in the world and also the most charming man who one just wanted to find a way of saying, yes, Maestro. And he would ask me things to do in productions. So many times I've been thinking, this doesn't make it, I hate it, I don't want to do this. And he said, oh John, please don't be difficult, just do it, you know it'll be good. And I always said, Gian Carlo, you have enough charm to get the devil himself to come up from hell and serve you tea on a silver charm. And I don't need that much charm, of course I'll do it. And whatever it was, I did it. And I have to say, every opening night, he would say, so, what do you think? And I said, you were right, you were right. There aren't many people to whom I would have said, you were right, you're right. I'm running on a little bit too much. I want to say that one of the other things that's been incredibly exciting about my contact with Gian Carlo is that he introduced me to Renée Fleming, and it was here in Charleston in '87. And she had one of the female roles, the smallest female role in fact, in the Opera Platé. And when I presented it the following year in Bern, Brooklyn Academy of Music, I restaged it around her so that she would sing all the female roles. And in fact, when I was in Charleston, when I first heard the music run through for this famous opera Platé, which I first thought might be a brand of cheese or something, I turned around to the lady who was at that time in charge of casting. I started a sentence hoping that the name would come to me by the end of it, and it hasn't. Erica Castelli. Anybody remember Erica Castelli? Larry, you remember Erica Castelli. I said to Erica, this young girl who's this Fleming girl who's singing this tiny role, it's wonderful. Why don't we, the girl who's singing the other roles is great, but why don't we swap them? She said, oh no, John, it's fine, we don't need to worry, it's fine. I said, no, really, she's much better. No, it's fine. What I didn't know was that the girl singing the other roles was the niece of the then music director. So, touch. However, when I was restaging it, I was able to stage the entire thing around. By then, the person I knew was Renée. And I remember very clearly having a phone call a month before we went into rehearsal from Renée saying, John, do you want to sit down? And I thought, oh God, what's happened? And she said, I don't think I can do the Platé. And at that time, I had already quite clearly established in my head who she was going to be. And I also, in a sense, realistically knew that my only response with Renée could ever be whatever you need. And it has maintained that, whatever you need. That's been my reaction to Renée, whatever we've done, many productions together. And I said, talk to me, and she said, well, I've been offered my first countess with Sir Thomas Allen in Houston. And I said, when? And she told me the date, and it did not conflict. But she said, our dress rehearsal, our first stage orchestra, is on the night of the Platé, and the piano tech, etc. These are important rehearsals for those of you who are not involved in the theatrical world. Really conflict with our rehearsals for the Platé in New York, and I can't afford to risk the countess, it's so important. Can you find somebody else? And I said, well, what about if I came to New York and we rehearsed the Platé early, and we'll video the rehearsal, and you take the video with you to Houston, and you'll come back and you'll miss all rehearsals with the orchestra except for the final orchestra dress. But I quoted something that Tullio Serafini said to Maria Callas when he asked her to sing I Puritani in Arena di Verona after she just sung Wagner for him. And she said, Maestro, I don't think I can sing it. And Serafini said to Callas, I said exactly these words to Renée, I said, I absolutely guarantee you can do it, and you will have a huge success. So I then phoned up with the then general director of the Houston Grand Opera, David Gockley, and said, David, we've got a conflict with time, and I will absolutely release Renée from everything to make sure that it works for you, but I need her to be present for the dress rehearsal and for the opening night, and then the second cast can take over for the other performances. And he said, oh, okay. So we did, and this opened, as I said, 4 days before my Met opening, which is my Met debut with Julius Caesar. And we had such a triumph. It's incredible. And Renée and I have gone on to do 6 or 7 productions since. The with Maestro Domingo conducting and Ruggero Raimondi in the role of Alfonso d'Este, and the young tenor Vittorio Brigolo as the son, whose name escapes me at the moment. And I'll be doing the same production in San Francisco in September with Renée. So she is, in a sense, has become my, well, since I first met her, has been my muse, and you don't get many of those in life, and I owe my muse to being introduced to her by Gian Carlo Menotti. So I want to finish by saying, Karen, thank you for inviting me. Thank you all for being here. I hope I've not dragged on too long, but my relationship with Gian Carlo has been something that's been personally so significant for me, and the fact that it has been associated with two of the most beautiful cities in the world, Spoleto Borgia and then Spoleto Charleston, has given me such an incredible thrill, because I hope all of you have heard Gian Carlo's Messa di Pulcritudine, the Mass of Beauty. Gian Carlo knew that beauty was its own reward, and that's not fashionable these days. But it is for the people of Charleston, because you live surrounded every day of your lives by beauty. And I live in just outside of Lucas, so my lifestyle is not so shabby either, but this is beauty. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here amongst all of you and your beauty. Thank you. Sorry, anybody got anything? Yes?
I remember as a child seeing on black and white televisions A Ball and the Nine Visitors. Was that the first performance, or was it?
I have no idea. Maybe. I mean, it was, as I was saying, it was composed for opera. You may have seen the original version.
Yeah, this was commissioned by NBC.
By NBC.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so you may have seen that. And Toscanini conducted. Wow! They could fit into it. Well, I guess that was it.
And with Renée Fleming, I'm a Renée Fleming groupie. And what else are you doing with her? I mean, that's plenty, but are you doing anything in the future? Any other?
We were just having a meeting about that yesterday in New York, and I can't discuss what the result of that meeting was. What I have done with her was, when she made her Met Violetta debut, not her Met debut, but her debut singing Violetta La Traviata, she had asked the company if they would like to ask Franco Zeffirelli's permission to invite me to design new costumes for her, which I was thrilled to find I was free to do, and the maestro was happy for me to do that. And it was then her first act costume was the subject of a double-page spread in Vogue by Anna Leibovitz, which has to be one of the highlights of my career, I have to say. And I hesitate to say what is the most exciting thing I've done with Renée, but meeting her has to be one of those. And what was interesting was that I remember when, at the early, because she had, I think it was her professional debut, and what was so interesting was she didn't even get reviewed. She wasn't even mentioned in any review. And she said this to me, and she was pretty shocked, and I said, Renée, this is so temporary. You don't need to worry about this. And at that time I had had 6 or 7 years of international career, and I had so frequently found that people who seemed so obviously wonderful were frequently ignored by critics, not because the critics didn't know, but in a sense, maybe it wasn't the critic's job to know that this was a talent or a voice that was going to become something incredible. Maybe it was their job to criticize the scenery or whatever, who knew? But it was very, and I have to say, when we did my first Don Giovanni was in the second company in Los Angeles, and that was to have been our first La Traviata, and the management phoned me 9 months before saying, just as the scene was about to be built, they wanted to change it and to do a Don Giovanni. And I said, well, how on earth are we going to do that? And he said, well, you can design it fast, I know. And I said, yes, but with the cast. And he said, well, we can incorporate the Traviata cast to a certain extent. And I was at that time directing and designing Joan Sullivan's final Nora in the world.